So, guys, I want to do a part two, and I want to talk about why the Moxley faction, the Death Riders, is not working. And I think like the biggest thing that I'm gonna say is is a lack of credibility. And I know like I'm gonna be repeating some information like I did in a prior video, but I really think that this is what's been hurting AEW. That first of all, credibility just means that it's the storytelling compelling. Do people want to go on and watch the show really? And there's a couple of things that I have to say about that. That firstly, the Death Riders faction lacks credibility because they don't have believable baby faces and believable villains. Like I've said about Moxley, that you don't understand what the hell he's saying half the time. And then also you have people like Wheeler Useless in his faction. Like honestly, like as I said, that in a real fight, anybody can kind of kick Wheeler Yuta's ass really. So you have people there who are not that credible. And then the other thing that I would say is that maybe like Claudio, somebody who's known for swinging the Big Show and doing all these big feat of strength spots, maybe he should be the leader over Moxley because he has like that big body build. The next thing that I would say is that you look at somebody like the like Orange Cassidy, the Dark Order, and a couple of other people who are going up against the Moxley, the Death Riders, and even like Darby Allin. Like all these guys are skinny as a rail type of people. So what would happen if it's actually like Dax and Cash, because Dax is a big body guy. You have Adam Copeland, who's had experience wrestling people like Big Show. What would happen if you had Paul White in the group? What would happen if you had Wardlow or Brian Cage or Powerhouse Hobbs or Samoa Joe? Like you had legitimate big body people really. So they don't really so lacks credibility because if a lot of the people who are taking on and fighting for the heart and soul of AEW are people that are not legitimate badasses, it really just doesn't work. The other thing that I would say is continuity, because a lot of times with AEW, what happens with a lot of their wrestlers? A lot of their wrestlers, disappear for a while. Like, for example, Hobbs was gone for a couple of months. He was out injured. You have Ricky Starks, not be utilized. You have people like John Morrison, who's wrestled all types of people, not really featured that well. You have people like Dustin Rhodes, who could be like that veteran that fights with the young guys or coaches the young guys or helps the young guys get better. But he's like, he's in Ring of Honor, really. So you kind of just have a lot of these wrestlers who, or like you look at Samoa Joe, who's actually off filming Twisted Metal, and you have MJF, who's off in Hollywood, really. So you have like a lot of people who are either at home, who should be on television. You have a lot of people who are off in their careers doing other projects. And the other thing that I will say is that you have people who, are just either injured too much, and either those wrestlers have to be fired or you have to put them in matches where they don't get injured that much. Like honestly, Hobbs should not be having a Will Ospreay type of match. Or you have like a wrestler like Adam Cole or another person where they should not be in matches where they're doing like stunts or extreme stuff, So they have to really just think about that. And I also will say that with the storytelling and with the credibility is that I also will say that another big issue with AEW is long title reigns. And I think that's kind of been an issue. Like, honestly, like Mariah May and Tony Storm, that's been going on for a long time. What would happen if you said something like, okay, Marina Shafir is going to take the title away from Mariah May, or you give it to Tony Storm and Marina Shafir takes it away from them? Imagine how much attention you're going to get, really, because you're going to have a new champion and you're going to have somebody that's part of the main storyline. Or Moxley says something like, people don't deserve it, people are not stepping up, so now we're going to take titles away from people. And you do that with Tony Storm. What would happen if you had Marina Shafir versus Athena, and then Marina Shafir is the one who ends her almost 2-year reign? What would happen if she nearly kills Billy Starks and Athena just goes medieval and other things like that? And and then you do something with that, so you don't have like the right people going after the right titles. And I've kind of even said that before. You have a like your trios title that's not always defended. What would happen if you had them fight against the conglomeration one week? They punished the conglomeration for losing. They punished the Hurt Syndicate. They punish other people on and on, really. Or what would happen if you did something where Wheeler Yuta gets pinned and the trios title goes to the Hurt Syndicate, and then what they do is that they beat the shit out of Wheeler Yuta, the Moxley faction, for him like getting the pinfall or something like that. And then the other thing that I've kind of said is Ring of Honor, really, like credibility. Like when you have Chris Jericho and other people like that kind of holding the titles, well, how much better would it be if they did something like threw Wheeler Yuta out of the the faction, and then you had it just be Big Bill in his place, really. Like, imagine how much that would do. Imagine Big Bill portraying Chris Jericho, and then at like the Super Card of Honor show in April, it's Big Bill versus Chris Jericho. He becomes the ROH champion. Or you do something like you have Powerhouse Hobbs actually be like, what? I hear what they're saying. What? I'm going to actually get the Ring of Honor championship. And, maybe we're going to do title versus title. Me as the Ring of Honor champion versus Moxley part 2 or something like that. There's a lot of just things that, they could really be doing that they just don't really, like, kind of live up to. And I think that's kind of been the big issue is that, is all this continuity and lack of credibility, really. I also think that the other thing, too, is that that there's a lot of just wrestlers on AEW that feel do what they want, really. I think with MJF and many wrestlers like him, he's more about his Hollywood career. He's more about just being smart ass, saying, I don't want to be here, or I'm thinking about Hollywood, or maybe I'll go to WWE. You have people like Ricky Starks who are underutilized, and he responds to that by saying something like, what, I'm clean, I'm healthy, I'm at home, and he puts over GCW, really, when I would take a wrestler like him and I would say, put him in the Moxley faction. Or what would happen if, like I said, he takes over the Death Riders, and he joins their faction and he's in their group, or he's he's in charge of the ROH chapter and runs wild on that show, really. See, there's just a lot of things that they can do. Another thing is, like the Von Erichs. Like the Von Erichs are part of AEW right now. So what would happen if you had the Von Erichs versus the Moxley faction, or what would happen if it's Shane Taylor Promotions and Anthony Ogogo and those people? Because Shane Taylor, he does have some intensity. There's something to him. So, there's just a lot that they can do, really. And I also feel that, I think somebody should do some fantasy booking. I'm actually thinking about doing a fantasy booking video. It's going to be very hard and challenging, but I do think that it would definitely be worth doing a fantasy booking on the Death Riders. And I would kind of give everybody that challenge. Like, if you were to do the Death Riders, like, book it from Wrestle Dream October all the way to All In July. How would you book the Death Riders, and how would you book their faction, and what would you really do with them? What would you really do to make them, profitable and other things like that? So that would be my challenge to everybody. But I think that one of the big issues is the lack of credibility with the Death Riders, and as I said before, that I think that, and as people say, I think there's a lot of promise in that faction, but they're doing everything wrong. And there's just a lot of and fans don't really trust the creative direction of AEW. They've kind of really proven that if you invest in a wrestler, they're going to be gone for a couple of months. There's a lot of people on the roster that just want to do what they want to do. Tony doesn't know how to manage people. And honestly, when it comes to storytelling and direction, a lot of titles are meaningless, or there's a lot of things that they can kind of really fix, but they're not going to fix, really. So I really think that, for me, I would like to sit down for a week, get a couple of beers, and really rewrite the whole Death Rider storyline and actually make something really good and compelling. Maybe that's what I'll do for you guys. But what I would also kind of say is that there's a lot of problems with AEW, and I also feel that Tony doesn't come off as a person that wants to fix his problems. So AEW, when it comes to Death Riders, they do have an issue with their credibility.